The Arctic is no longer a frozen backwater, it's a front line. As Donald Trump renews pressure over Greenland, diplomacy is moving fast, quiet, and uneven. Denmark is talking, Europe is mobilizing, and Washington is pushing for leverage without invasion. Greenland, vast, frozen, and sparsely populated, has suddenly become one of the most contested pieces of real estate on the planet. Not because of its people, not because of politics at home, but because of what lies beneath its ice and where it sits on the map. As President Donald Trump intensifies his push for a greater U.S. presence in the Arctic, Denmark finds itself walking a diplomatic tightrope. This week, U.S., Danish, and Greenlandic officials met behind closed doors to discuss a new framework deal, one designed to address Washington's security concerns without crossing Copenhagen's ultimate red line, sovereignty. Danish officials insist Greenland is not for sale, but they are willing to talk about everything else: defense cooperation, military access, and Arctic security architecture. The urgency is not accidental. Trump has made it clear that Greenland matters, strategically, militarily, and economically. Last week, he announced a so-called framework of a future deal, paired with a warning: oppose American ambitions and face tariffs. Support them, and economic pressure disappears. It was classic Trump, transactional, blunt, and effective. The pressure campaign worked. Talks began. Danish officials engaged Washington, while some leaders traveled to Berlin and Paris, seeking European backing before negotiations deepened. The message from Copenhagen is twofold. Cooperation is possible, but territorial control is not on the table. Not now, not ever. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio struck a calmer tone on Capitol Hill, telling lawmakers that talks are in a good place.
And can you report to this committee once that audit system is set up?
Oh, absolutely.
When you were a member of this committee, you authored legislation to prevent President Trump from unilaterally leaving NATO, you and Senator Kaine. Do you still believe that the U.S. benefits from NATO?
We do. I mean, the problem, but NATO needs to be reimagined as well in terms of the obligations. And this is not new to this president. Multiple presidents have complained about it.
I agree.
think this president just complains about it louder than other presidents.
Well, I'm just trying to be get a clear answer on where this administration stands relative to NATO, because it's been a very fuzzy message over the last year. And do you agree that we're stronger in confronting China when we do so with like-minded partners, and that China is still the #1 threat that we face in the United States?
Yeah, but our like-minded partners have to have capability, and that's been part of the problem, is the erosion in European defense capabilities, because they've taken vast amount of the monies that these are rich countries. And because of the NATO umbrella, it gave them the flexibility to spend a tremendous amount of their revenues on social programs and not on defense. Now, maybe that trend line will begin to change.
Well, it's already begun to change, frankly, and thanks. And I think the president deserves credit for that. But part of that strength also comes not just from having, and to the extent to which that unity is undermined, like the talk about Greenland and antagonizing Denmark, then it undermines NATO's ability. And the only people who are excited about that are Vladimir Putin and President Xi.
Yeah, well, I would say that I think our alliances in NATO ultimately are something that's going to work out. Our partners understand the importance of the U.S. presence in NATO. Without the U.S., there is no NATO. And we understand that in order for NATO to be stronger, our partners need to be stronger. And one of the things we've explained to our allies in NATO is the United States is not simply focused on Europe. We also have defense needs in the Western Hemisphere. We have defense needs in the Indo-Pacific. And it will require us. We may be the richest country in the world, but we don't have unlimited resources. And as we reassign
exactly why we want to have allies and partners to help us as we're looking at conflicts around the world. And when we antagonize our allies and partners, and when we send Canada to do a trade deal with China instead of coming to New Hampshire or the United States, it weakens our ability to confront our adversaries.
Yeah, but our allies have to be two things. They have to be willing to step up, but they also have to be capable of stepping up. And frankly, many of them have not.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Rubio. Good to be with you again. And our president's comments about NATO, about Denmark, and his attempts to coerce Denmark into giving up Greenland are appalling. They profoundly harmed our security. And I am asking you to do everything you can to reinforce our commitment to NATO.
Now, in the case of Greenland, I'll say we're in a good place right now. We had excellent meetings with the Secretary General of NATO. In fact, even as I speak to you now, there'll be some technical level meetings between us and our partners in Greenland and Denmark on this issue. And I think we have in place a process that's going to bring us to a good outcome for everybody. The President's interest on Greenland has been clear. It's a national security interest. It's a long-standing interest that predate this administration. It's one that our allies acknowledge is real. I think we're going to get something positive done. We're going to begin that process in a very professional, straightforward way. It begins today, and it'll be a regular process. We're going to try to do it in a way that isn't like a media circus every time these conversations happen, because we think that creates more flexibility on both sides to arrive at a positive outcome. And I think we're going to get there. And I thought it was noteworthy and important that despite your concerns, the President at his speech in Davos made very clear that the United States was not going to use force or military force in Greenland. So I think we're going to wind up in a good place. We got a little bit of work to do, but I think we're going to wind up in a good place. And I think you'll hear the same from our colleagues in Europe very shortly.
They fought side by side with American troops. Now they say they feel betrayed. Danish and Greenlandic veterans are speaking out after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to acquire Greenland and openly questioned NATO's value. For soldiers who once called Americans their brothers in arms, the shock runs deep. It's very disrespectful. That's how some Danish veteran describes Washington's recent rhetoric. As they reiterate, fear and unease are spreading across both Denmark and Greenland. Those feelings intensified after the Trump administration repeatedly floated the idea of taking Greenland before abruptly walking it back. Just hours after demanding right, title, and ownership of the autonomous Danish territory, Trump reversed course, announcing a so-called framework for a future deal after meeting NATO chief Mark Rutte. European allies cautiously welcomed the reversal, but many warned the damage to transatlantic trust may already be done. The mood in Nuuk and Copenhagen remains tense as Greenlanders and Danes confront a new reality, one where the United States is no longer seen purely as a protector, but a potential threat. Denmark has a long history of fighting alongside the United States in NATO missions, UN peacekeeping operations, and US-led wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. After the September 11th attacks, Denmark was among the first to answer Washington's call. Nearly 20,000 Danish personnel deployed to Afghanistan. At least 41 Danish soldiers were killed, one of the highest per capita casualty rates among NATO allies. 8 more died in Iraq. Greenlandic soldiers, though fewer in number, volunteered to serve and paid the price alongside their allies. Now, many say their sacrifice is being dismissed. A group, Veteran Project Greenland, an organization supporting veterans through rehabilitation and connection. In a joint statement, they stressed, "Greenland belongs to the Greenlandic people." They added they were deeply disturbed by what they call U.S. disrespect for international law. Another Greenlandic soldier, Salek Augustinsson, went further, writing an open letter to the American people. He reminded them that Denmark and Greenland stood shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. after 9/11. "I fought alongside you in Afghanistan," Augustinsson wrote. NATO's Article 5, declaring an attack on one an attack on all, has been invoked only once in history. That was after the 9/11 attacks on the United States. While Trump backed away from military action this week, his rhetoric continues to echo across the alliance. In a Fox News interview, he falsely claimed NATO troops stayed off the front lines in Afghanistan. That sparked outrage among allies who lost more than 1,000 soldiers in the war. European veterans flooded social media with photos from Afghanistan, pushing back. Norwegian, Canadian, German, Dutch, and British soldiers posted images from combat zones, reminding Washington of their sacrifices. Another Greenlandic soldier, Kunungwak Iverson, said he felt backstabbed. He served in Iraq in 2006 as part of a U.S.-led coalition. When they called, we answered, he said. The way they treat us now is not okay. As tensions grew, EU leaders convened an emergency summit to address Trump's Greenland threats. Sweden's deputy prime minister warned, "We're not out of the woods." Meanwhile, details of the U.S. Greenland framework remain unclear. No written agreement has been released. Sources say discussions center on updating a 1951 defense agreement governing U.S. military presence on the island. The proposed framework would block Russian and Chinese investment in Greenland. It would also expand NATO's role and potentially allow the U.S. to build additional military bases, possibly on land considered sovereign American territory. For veterans who once fought America's wars, the issue is no longer strategy, but trust. They answered the call when the U.S. needed them. Now they're asking whether the alliance they defended still stands.